Good morning. We're back for our second of our Election Day Studio C70 interviews with important policymakers, partners, community members, voters, and then in this case, the executive director of PA Youth Vote, one of Committee of 70's most valuable partners, Angelique Hinton. It's wonderful to see you. You've done several of these before, so we're excited to have you back. Thank you for being
Yeah.
here.
Thank you for having me. I'm always excited to be with my partner, Committee of 70. And this is a big day for us, right? It's
It is.
election day.
That's right. This is why we do this, right?
Mhm.
So.
Yeah.
I know we've talked with PA Youth Vote before, but for those of who are watching the live stream, we're going to be watching later, who aren't familiar with PA Youth Vote, can you give us kind of a background on what you all do, what your mission is, what your superpower is?
Yeah. Our superpower is that we work year-round with young people, primarily in high school, more increasingly in college, in schools that are underfunded and don't have access to a lot of civics education. So we're going into those schools and making sure that those students have year-round civic engagement, really helping connect the dots for them between the issues that they care about and the ballot, up and down the ballot, right? Really helping them understand the importance of these roles that are being elected and how they all will impact policy that will ultimately affect them on a day-to-day basis. So we make sure they are have voter education, we help with voter registration, all in a nonpartisan fashion. And then we also help them to understand that once these people get in office, our role as constituents is also to hold leaders accountable. And so we provide tools to help them with that as well.
That's great. Wonderful. Can we start with your work? I want to dig into your work in Pittsburgh, because you all have expanded out there and you just did some really neat stuff around the mayoral race. That's kind of one of the big races that people around the Commonwealth can be watching. Can you talk about what you've been doing there and how engaging those young people have taught you more about working with different communities around the state?
Yeah, so Pittsburgh, we worked with them. They are have a very exciting race happening up there. So there's a lot of excitement around the mayoral race. And so we really worked together with a coalition up in Pittsburgh to really engage young people, help them be trained on how to do candidate interviews, and then this did this really robust series of candidate interviews with students who were trained, asked questions of school board candidates. And we got to go into different schools, some of which had not ever really had elected leaders kind of come in and engage on that way. So I think that it really made people feel seen and heard. And I know the feedback was that, a lot of the schools were really excited that they got to have the candidates come and really be showcased in their school. So I think one of the reasons why young people don't participate, there are many. Education, I would argue, is the biggest one. But we're not really being engaged, right? Young people are not really being engaged by elected leaders because there's a cycle. They're not being educated, so they're not necessarily always really quick to participate. Because they don't participate, elected leaders don't necessarily engage. And so there's this cycle, which we
Mhm.
are really actively trying to break through the work that we're doing at PAU Vote.
That's great. That's wonderful. Can you talk about what's different or unique to approaching people in Western Pennsylvania, particularly young people, approaching people in Western Pennsylvania versus Philadelphia or other parts of the state? Is there anything that's unique about that, or is it kind of the same ideas?
So I think it's important for people to understand, like, to your point, right? Regionally, there always can be some differences, right? And then there will be some consistency across the state. And so, you know, we usually try to, whenever we go into a different areas, really try to understand the issues that those students were engaging with.
Mhm.
Really are focused on and then connect the dots for them that way. And so I'd say, like, both in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, there's similarities around schools and the lack of funding available, right? The lack of again, resources in communities. Gentrification is a concern that we've seen across the board, gun violence. We've also recently moved into Berks County, and so gun violence is an issue that they also care very much about. We just went to Harrisburg a week or so ago, and they did a huge advocacy day with our Berks for Peace initiative. It falls into our Berks Youth Voter Coalition or initiative. And so I think you'll find similarities, but again, in some cases you'll find differences. Like we've talked to kids in Lower Merion and Radnor, and they care more about sometimes public spaces, right? Or, so it just varies depending on who you're engaging and where you are.
Well, that's a good kind of lead into the next question too. Is we're in a moment where voters are either completely tuned out, they're disillusioned, or they're intensely passionate. And so, how are you shaping your messaging to meet people where they are, especially younger voters that are in each of these kind of mindsets?
So I think that what we found is our quote unquote superpower is
Hmm.
really trying to again lead with listening, right? Understanding what they care about, the people we're engaging care about, and then connecting the dots at the super local level because that's where they're most directly going to feel the impact, right? And so we try to keep it local, really make that connection for them about the importance of races like judges, right? So young people if you look at data, they care about racial justice, right? Well, judges play a key role in that. A DA plays a key role in what type of justice system we're going to have, right? So it's really trying to make the information that you're providing or the education relevant. To what they care about. A lot of times you hear, oh, we have to save democracy. And for many people in communities that we're in, which is mostly, communities of color, low income, right? Um, Honestly, democracy hasn't been the most responsive, right? And it hasn't been very reflective of the people that live in those communities. So to ask people to save democracy, they're not really sure what they're saving, right? But if you can talk to them about these local races, again, like a DA race or your school board race, which, determines what type of curriculum you may have, or, your mayor and your council who sets a budget that invests or not in your community. All of those things feel really relevant for people and it resonates. And then they see their source of empowerment really to make some changes they want to see locally. And then we go up the ballot. So we don't do top down, we do bottom up. It's kind of our mindset.
You gave a great answer that kind of answered my next question too about the messages or formats that have started to break through the apathy and the fatigue of this cycle. So I really appreciate your response there. So judicial retention elections are coming up in November, and those are a really hard sell, notoriously, for particularly younger first-time voters. Are you all thinking about how to do that yet? Are you kind of more focused on the primary now, and then we start getting into retention in the fall? That's when PA Youth Vote will lock into messaging around that. Have you started to think about how you're going to educate your audience on those?
We are thinking about it, and it does continue to be a challenge because it's like this great mystery, right? And
Yeah.
so again, really trying to figure out, and I think there's a lot of work that can be done, with coalitions like ours to really try to get more information out to people because I think, people tend to just ignore those races because they just have no idea who these people are, what, they have done in their, term. And so, yes, the answer is we are thinking about it, but still trying to figure out what is the best way to really educate the electorate about just this process, right? And the importance of participating in it, and then how to get information to be informed participants in this process.
Yeah. I think one of the things that Committee of 70 is kind of keeping an eye on and watching with a little bit of trepidation is the amount of national attention and out-of-state resources that are going to be pouring into Pennsylvania for the retention elections, particularly around the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to think about how are we staying grounded. And I'd be curious if you could maybe expand on kind of what you've already said around how PA Youth Vote is going to stay grounded in local priorities with all that outside national attention that's going to be coming in the fall after the summer
I
break.
mean, we had a lot of that in the presidential last
Right.
year, right? And so we definitely stay away from all of that, right? Again, really kind of staying laser focused on local elections, really providing nonpartisan information, and then, providing that education around what these offices do, how they impact you, so that we can, have creative, like, thinking skills, right? About, again, these races really impact you every single day. This is how, and this is why we need to participate in them. But we saw, and we continue to see, right, this disparity between this excitement around elections. And so for us, we definitely just try to stay out of that, right? Because that gets oftentimes too political, right? And we're trying to stay out of the politics and just focus on the importance of these offices and policies that will impact us every single day.
Absolutely.
But we'll
So
see that
building
next
on that,
year. If not in this in the November, we'll definitely see that again next year. Um,
yeah,
it was a lot last. It was a lot in the presidential, and
right,
so but the nature of kind of what we do. So.
yeah. And Pennsylvania being basically the largest battleground state in the country, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. There was a
Um,
lot.
yeah, right. What's your approach? You've talked about kind of meeting young voters where they are and connecting to issues that they care about. Do you all have a special approach to helping young voters kind of see their impact, why their vote matters, particularly in some of these less publicized races?
So basically just helping them understand, right? Like I worked in the Senate, so I have worked in government, right? And so really helping them understand and taking them through coming into that office. One of the first things we did, because it was a newly elected senator, was really identifying who votes, right? And a lot of times that is how, elected leaders are going to prioritize those voices that they're hearing the most are going to be the ones that they're most responsive to. And so really making it that simple for them to let them know that, this is kind of how your community will or will not be prioritized a lot of times really has to do with, who's making the most noise, if you will. And so connecting the dots for them to understand if you're not making your voice heard, if you're not voting, right? If you're not then showing up and holding leaders accountable, sadly, you will not be the priority, right? And so it becomes really, they're smart, they're brilliant. So they figure that out pretty quickly. And, we're like, listen, you hire these people to do a job. And if they don't do the job, then we have to hold them accountable through our vote again. And maybe it's, electing someone else. But I think they understand that when you speak to them in that way. It's really is sometimes sadly that simple. Like I said, I participated in a setup of a new office and it really determined where we were going to send our resources, where we were going to spend the senator's time. So it really matters kind of who is showing up and voting. And then again, who is following up once they're in office to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. It's not just the vote, it's what you're doing after the vote.
It's voting. We are a voting and
And right.
organization. And I do think that you're seeing now, more increasingly that people are starting to realize one, we need more education. And for young people, but across the board for our entire electorate needs to have more education around, government and how it works, which you guys did that great. We partner with you. You guys did that great whole project around how Philly works and then we created curriculum. So the education piece is key, but then also the other piece is it's not just enough to vote, right? We have to follow up with these people that get elected and hold them accountable to being responsive to the constituencies they serve. And I think more and more increasingly, you see people understanding that and starting to figure out how do we also educate the electorate about that.
Thank you for that plug. It's a great plug for how Philly works, and then the curriculum that you all created in partnership with 70 for students to understand the governmental process outside of the voting booth, how their votes make an impact on the functions of government throughout. city council, the mayor's office, city agencies, and then moving up to the state level. So yeah,
Yeah, I
appreciate
would love to talk about Pittsburgh. That's one
it.
thing
Right.
I would love to, see if we can even partner out on, out that way and create
Hmm.
something like that. It's been very, very popular and helpful. And I think that's what people need is just to break it down for them so it's not so confusing, and not so scary.
Absolutely. So last question or two for you is what gives you excitement on election day, particularly this election day? What's got you feeling hopeful or joyful?
So I mean, I'm coming off of a year where there was a lot of excitement, but for us, what we were excited by was in the primary last year, right? The 18-year-olds that we're collectively, right, engaging, all of us work together, and there's more that are part of our coalition. But we saw that the 18-year-olds doubled the turnout of any other Gen Z age in the primary, and then they outpaced the turnout, generally in the general. So I'm excited because I feel like I have seen, when you're engaging young people, right, when you're meeting them where they are and you're investing in them, right, in a way that makes them feel seen and heard, they care very much about, being empowered through this process. And we are seeing them participate and not only participate and vote, but they continue to stay engaged in the work that we do. So, I'm excited by that. And on days when I feel really, really sad, I have the privilege and we have the privilege of working with these young, brilliant people that are doing amazing things. And so that keeps me inspired and hopeful to know that at some point, we will get to a place where we all feel like we have a democracy that is reflective of and responsive to all of us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Miss Angie, for both your time today, but then your work and partnership every day of the year. And we love working with PA Youth Vote. Really appreciate your all's efforts, and yeah, happy election day.
We love working with you too, and we're grateful for your partnership, and we talk about it all the time. So thank you for always supporting us and finding creative and innovative ways to continue to expand on that.
Wonderful. Great. Best
Thank
of
you.
luck. We'll talk to you
Happy
soon.
Election Day.
The election day.
Bye.